Miss Deborah. Good evening. Ishmael, hello. Happy Friday, everyone. Hope everyone's had a good week so far. And getting geared up for the Memorial Day weekend. Can everyone hear me all right? Give me some thumbs up or some hearts or some indication that you can hear me just fine. Hello, Ishmael and his wife. Hello, Penny Joe. All right, so like normal, we will give this until about 5 after. Whoops, no, we don't need any of those filters. We do not need any of that today. All right. Oh, thank you. I love the heart. Thank you. Did I just lose my, no, I didn't. Okay. So of the folks that are here this evening, has anyone joined us for the first time tonight? Or is everyone pretty much kind of on the same, everyone's, oh my God, I look like my dad. I look like my dad. Don't do that again. Oh my God. The one thing that I'm sad about with the with the recordings, the replays, is they don't play any of that stuff. Like they don't play any of the things that you guys like send me. Like the hat, the mustache, the hearts. Like I wish I could replay all of that, but they won't record it for whatever reason. So that was too funny. Oh my God, too funny. I seriously looked like my dad. Oh my God. All right, so if anyone is new, we are reading from Leonardo's Swans this evening by Karen Essex. And basically, the story is we are following two sisters from a very prominent family in Renaissance Italy. And basically, we're watching these two girls kind of figure themselves out because they've each been married off at this point. They're both quite young, but you know that was normal for the day in their position. And so they're learning how to either work through this world of intrigue and this world of political turmoil and this time of great social change. They're trying to figure out if they are going to end up being each other's friends or if they're going to end up being enemies, and just trying to navigate the world as a woman in this time frame when, you know, prospects were limited in the sense of what you could be and who you could be with and all this stuff. So it's been, we're about halfway through at this point. So there would be a lot to catch up on. If you've happened to have missed the previous readings of this book, I will have them up. I currently have them up on my YouTube page. So if you can just pop over to my bio here in TikTok, you can find the link to my YouTube page. So that way you can catch up on what we've been reading. Except Tuesday's reading, because I've been having a hard time downloading it for some reason. I will try again tonight after tonight's reading. So look for the most recent installation of this week tonight at some point. I will try to get my act together. So, For anyone who has the book and is currently following along, we are on page 113. And I'm gonna reread just a little bit, just so we kind of have some grasp of what's happening here. We're having a conversation between one of the main characters and her cousin, who is a very unhappy duchess who is currently married to a man who is not interested in her at all. So it's just she's starting to plot and scheme, and she's asking for one of the main characters' help in this regard. So we'll start from this conversation and just kind of move right along. The French want Naples. That's no secret. Ludovico believes that if he helps the French take Naples from King Ferrante, then Charles will invest him with the title of Duke of Milan. Do you know what will happen in that case to my husband and me? Ludovico either will have us exiled or will have us murdered in our sleep, whichever suits him. But imagine, Beatrice, your own husband joining the French to depose our grandfather Ferrante. Is that what you want? This is ridiculous, Beatrice says. There is no such intrigue. But she cannot forget the comment Ludovico had made about her someday being the best of friends with the Queen of France, if all goes according to plan. Now, in light of Isabel's accusations, it makes perfect sense. Join with me, Isabel says. Ferrante loves us both. If he knew that not one of his granddaughters but two were suffering constant humiliation at the hands of our husbands, he would send an army here to rescue us. We are princesses of two of the greatest families in Europe, Aragon and Este. We are blood, Beatrice. Your mother is of the house of Aragon. Who is Ludovico but the son of a mercenary who stole power at an opportune time? You can pay him back for all that he is doing to sink our names into disgrace. I must think on this, cousin. These are the only words Beatrice can say as she mumbles them, not meeting Isabel's angry eyes. She feels fear now, fear of her cousin and fear of her husband, and she does not know which is or should be the greater. Isabel's eyes are so wild and her voice so full of venom that Beatrice wonders, if she refuses to conspire with her, will Isabel try to kill her? On the other hand, could Ludovico's plans be so far-reaching and sinister? As if answering Beatrice's unspoken question, Isabel says, Ludovico Sforza would conspire with the devil himself to become Duke of Milan. He would happily betray you, your family, my husband, our family, or his own family to satisfy his ambitions. Beatrice starts to turn Drago around so that she does not have to look at her cousin. I said I would think on it. Think on this while you are thinking. Isabel's words fly like arrows past Beatrice's ears, whizzing, angry, dangerous, and seeking a soft target. If Ludovico joins with France against Naples, Beatrice, what will be your lot? Have you thought of that? I can tell you. You will be sent back to your father, and while your bed is still warm, a French bride, taken to please King Charles, will be sleeping in your quarters. That is, if Ludovico does not see that you are mysteriously given some bad meat first. Beatrice wants to answer that Ludovico would never do such a thing, but she is not so certain that her cousin has not hit upon some unfortunate truth. Not that she intends to allow the horrible prediction to come to fruition. She says nothing. Her shoulders rise and her arms and legs shoot out to the side to gain strength, stretched out like some awkward bird attempting to take flight, and breathing in a little more warm air, she slaps her legs against Drago and gallops away toward the sounds of the hunting party. Thoughts pass through her mind like the wind, making her heart pump faster as she races along the narrow path. She feels as if her body is going to implode from the dozens of emotions rising within her, and yet she cannot think. She does not want to think. Despite all she feels, her head is empty. She rides as fast as she can, but she can hear that the hunting party has picked up speed and is riding away from her as quickly as she tries to catch up with them. Arriving at the end of the path, she comes to the clearing and sees in the distance that Ludovico, Galeaz, and several of the men are giving chase to a pack of brown wolves, while the women hang behind, chattering among themselves under little green tents, taking umbrage from the sun. Beatrice picks up speed, heading for the chase. The horses and the hounds have pushed the wolves to the edge of the river, surrounding them. The hounds bark madly, and the wolves, Beatrice counts 7, ululate with ferocity in response. The men cry out to their pages for their bows and spears. Ludovico smiles as he sees Beatrice approach at breakneck speed. He raises his hand, signaling her to slow down, but she gallops ahead, almost knocking over a page who is quickly trying to thread a dark wooden bow with a green arrow. "Bow!" she demands, and the boy, startled, freezes. Beatrice circles him, and before he is aware of what she is doing, leans to her right, grabbing the weapon as she circles Drago around the page. In a split second, she identifies her target, the largest of the animals, looking at her with eyes like icy moons. She thinks for a moment that she sees the landscape reflected in its eyes. It growls at her, frightening her horse, which backs up skittishly. Galeas shoots, and one of the wolves drops to the ground, making the survivors howl yet more fiercely. Beatrice thinks she might go mad from this wailing chorus. If only to silence at least one of them, to stop this ear-splitting lamentation, she clutches her legs tight around Drago's superbly veined belly for balance, and releases the arrow into the wolf's side. She knows that she has missed her precise mark, instead piercing the animal through the upper chest. Perhaps in anger, perhaps from the pain that must be shooting through its front legs, the wolf leaps in the air at her, burying its teeth into Drago's chest. The horse rears back, hooves kicking into the air high above his head like an acrobat. Beatrice feels herself leave the saddle. Like a kite, she rises into the air as Drago kicks and bucks wildly, trying to release himself from the wolf's grip. She sees blood from the wounds spreading over the coats of both animals. She sees that the afternoon sky is lapis blue, and that lavender buds have already begun to hang like jewels in the wisteria trees. The last thing she sees is the look of horror on Ludovico's face, his eyes bulging and his hands frozen in the air like a statue of an ancient orator. She thinks, but cannot be sure, that he has just screamed "No!" Then she feels her body hit hard earth, and all is black. Missed my mouth, good Lord. From the notebook of Leonardo. Of the movement of birds. When birds wish to fly from one spot to another, they will fly faster by making spontaneous, headlong movements, and then rising up with reflex movements against the resistance in the air, and again making a fresh descent, and so on and so forth. Dissect the bat, study it carefully, and on the model of this animal and his wings, design the machine. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. I'm glad you like my videos. I hope you're liking the reading so far. A tiny chirp breaks the silence. Beatrice thinks it must be morning, though she is not ready to open her eyes. She feels a cool rag on her forehead and a blanket over her body. She thinks that she might be in Naples, and her governess has come in during the night to cover her from unexpected cool evening breezes. Why the cool cloth? Has she suffered fevers? She hopes that Nanny won't scold her again for riding through a cold spring day without a cloak. Beatrice remembers riding along the windy coast of Naples Bay. Yesterday, today, or many years ago, calculating that a short illness is an easy price to pay for the ecstasy of dancing the day long with fresh ocean breezes. Now a large, strange, hot hand is on hers. Beatrice? A man's voice rises above the warbling bird. Can you hear me, darling wife? She opens her eyes. Her husband is inches away from her face, staring at her as if she has awakened from the dead. Startled by his large features and his concerned look, she pulls away, but has nowhere to go. Head glued to the pillow, she waits for her memory to catch up with her, and it does. The sickening conversation with Isabel by the stagnant pond, the wolf's bare teeth, screaming with pain, blood spurting everywhere, and Drago rearing up like some wild dancer and knocking her into the sky. Beatrice winces, remembering it all. They have taken her back to her room at the palace at Vigevano, where she wants to close her eyes again and against the feelings of anger and disgrace. Is there pain? Ludovico asks. The doctor says that no bones are broken, nor is the skull injured. Beatrice manages a slight smile and then directs her gaze away from his face. Why is he looking so concerned if he intends to replace her with a Frenchwoman, or poison her in the interim? Even without Isabel of Aragon's insinuations, Ludovico's worry about one whom he so neglects seems misplaced. She cannot figure it unless, as she has been hoping, he loves her more than she thinks. The drapes and shutters are still open, and she can see the dusky sun nearing the end of its day's journey. The sky is purple, leaving much of the room in shadow. Someone has lit a small lamp. Ludovico turns his face upward, thanking God in Latin, our Lord's favorite language, for not taking his little wife, but returning to her to those of us who love her the most. Galeaz shows himself, holding a small, gilded cage with a little red finch. He lowers the cage so that Beatrice can see its fluttering wings. I told them that you would hear the song of the bird, and that it would bring you back to us. He is smiling, his teeth gleaming at her, the brightest thing in the room. Madonna Beatrice, please say something to us. The voice is officious, and not at all pleasant to the ear. Messer Ambrogio, Ludovico's astrologer, steps out of Ludovico's shadow and looms over her bed. Beatrice does not like him. He is too thin. Not fit and sculpted like her father, but the kind of thin that results from a dislike of food or from a body full of worms that eat away anything he ingests. Either way, she has never understood why Ludovico has chosen this person upon whom to rely for the timing of so many crucial decisions. Step aside, sir, so that I can see the setting sun. There, that was exactly what she wanted to say to this man, and she said it. Perhaps a fall from a horse, a knock on the head, is exactly what she has needed to shake up all of the words that roll around in her brain and make them come out of her mouth. She almost giggles at her impertinence, but she sees that Ludovico and Galeaz are both snickering behind the astrologer's back. Look who is here, Ludovico says. He puts his arm around her neck and helps her to sit up. Matilda springs forth with a devilish grin, then dives with her hands to the ground, turning over into a handstand. She wears no underwear. She kicks her legs into the air, spreading them apart, demonstrating her hairy crotch before jumping back to her feet in triumph. Beatrice gives her favorite dwarf a little round of applause. You're just fine, aren't you, Duchess? Matilda's anxious face, with her too big nose and ears, is side by side with Ludovico's, both staring at her with the intensity of governesses searching a child's hair for lice. Yes, Matilda, I am just fine. You may go now, and tell the steward that I have ordered him to give you a special bottle of red wine from the cellar, the finest vintage of what we have just brought up from Osteria. To show her appreciation, Matilda cartwheels her way out of the room, giving her bare behind to the royals, cackling all the way down the hall. Galeaz has put the birdcage down on a dressing table and kneels by the bedside, taking her hand. You are the bravest woman in all the world. You were magnificent today. We are having the wolf stuffed for you. He'll make a nice trophy. And Drago? Superficial wounds, Ludovico says. No wild creature will take that animal down. He is resting in the stables with a fragrant ointment upon his chest, made especially for him by the stable-master. I will mix your excellency a potion for sleep, declares Messer Ambrogio. No, now that I am awake, I intend to remain this way as long as I can, Beatrice says. But your excellency needs rest. Beatrice interrupts him. Gentlemen, I would like to be alone with my husband, if you please. Galeaz kisses her hand again and again, pressing it to his face. Without another word, he backs out of the door smiling, but the astrologer waits behind. Did he not hear her? Is her voice faint and inarticulate? Beatrice waits another polite second and then asks, Sir, are you my husband? Your excellency is either not well or is joking. Then I really must ask you to leave. He looks stunned by her command, turning to Ludovico, who confirms with a nod that the astrologer and medicine man is no longer needed in the room. With emphatic clicking heels and no further discussion, he leaves them alone. You gave us quite the scare, Ludovico says, taking the cloth from her brow and kissing her forehead. Thank God you are not harmed. He says this not as if it is the beginning of a conversation, but as if he is winding up his business with her so that he can leave the room. Beatrice feels fury rise up within her. Does he have Cecilia hidden somewhere at Vigevano? My lord, she says, I wish to tell you about my terrible dream. What dream is that, child? Child. Soon he will no longer think upon her in this way. I dreamed. Oh, it was frightening and ridiculous, she begins, trying to achieve just the right rhythm and tone for what she is about to say. I dreamed that you were in secret conspiracy with the French King Charles against my grandfather Ferrante. You know that this arrangement would cause me terrible pain because I grew up in his court. I know that he is not a well-liked man, but I sat on his lap and pulled on his beard all during my childhood, and he loves me very much. In my dream, you were going to war with Naples. This angered my cousin, Isabel of Aragon, so she appealed to me to throw my lot in with her and with the house of Aragon, against you, my own husband. Beatrice gives Ludovico a little smile, as if to say, Isn't that silly? She waits for him to speak. He looks at her gravely. And how does this go in your dream? Not well, my lord, at least not for you, because I did join with Isabel in the kingdom of Naples, which isn't so far-fetched because my mother is of the house of Aragon, so of course Ferrara supported me, as it would support one of its princesses, and since Ferrara supported Naples, then Mantua was not far behind. And the worst part was that Mantua gave Venice a good reason to attack Milan, because Francesco is captain general of their army, and they would naturally support him. The Venetians would love to do you in, my lord, and that is not just a fiction of my dream. Ludovico seems keenly interested in what his child bride is saying. She wonders if he has ever before so thoroughly captured his attention. He sits on the bed and speaks to her slowly and deliberately. Oh, Leah, we are reading Leonardo Swans by Karen Essex. And we're about halfway through the book at this point. So if you've missed my other readings, you can actually find them on my YouTube page. I've got them listed already. The first two, I'll be downloading the third one from Tuesday tonight, and this reading will be available for uploading tomorrow at the earliest. So I hope that helps. If you happen to have the book, we are currently on page 120. He sits on the bed and speaks to her slowly and deliberately. Tell me, Beatrice, how does this fantasy play out? You flee to Naples with Isabel of Aragon? Oh, no, my lord. We send for their army. My uncle Alfonso rides at its head because, as you know, he deeply hates you. No, we do not leave Milan, but the army comes here and rescues us. Oh, it's very exciting. The Neapolitan army rides up from the south, and the Venetians, backed by Ferrara and Mantua, attack from the east, with Francesco commanding them. You wouldn't believe it, but he sits on his horse at the walls of the castello, screaming at you for trying to take his wife. Now, why would Francesco engage in such nonsense, even in a dream? A little smile cuts across Ludovico's face, yet his eyes are very serious. He's terribly jealous, and if a man even talks to Isabella, much less corresponds with her regularly as you do, he takes great offense. At any rate, in my dream, the French do not come to your rescue, and the armies of Italy demolish Milan. Beatrice waits quietly. Does he see through her ruse? She realizes that a better woman would have confronted him directly with Isabel of Aragon's accusations, and with his clandestine lust for her sister, but this is as direct as she can be. Her mother has a saying about attracting flies with honey, but at this moment she cannot remember it, only its moral. Ludovico does not jump to his own defense, but speaks with measure. Surely you know that your sister depends on me for advice. The Marquis leaves so many functions of government to her, and she is barely 18 years of age. Oh, I understand that, my lord, and I would die rather than deprive my sister of your good counsel, but there is no controlling the thoughts of a man like Francesco. He is not in possession of good reason when it comes to his wife. That is what they tell me, Ludovico sighs. The mocking she had expected in his voice is not there. That is quite the terrible dream. Did I die? I do not remember exactly, she goes on, now more confident than her tactic is working. He is neither yelling at her, nor laughing at her, nor walking away from her in anger or disgust. But after the armies captured the Castello, they took you away and left the city to Gian Galeazzo and Isabel of Aragon, with my uncle Alfonso as governor. It was what Isabel wanted all along, to get rid of you so that she could be the true duchess. She kept saying in the dream that you would collude with the devil himself to become the Duke of Milan. And you believe that, Beatrice, either in your dream or in your waking state? She waits. She knows that when she is playing a good hand of cards, good but not infallible, she must choose precisely the right moment to call the opponent's bluff. Because if he pulls a trump on her, she loses all. She wants no surprise from Ludovico laid on the table. She speaks slowly, trying her best to appear nonchalant. No, my lord, I do not, because I know that you are an intelligent man, and if you were truly intent upon becoming the official Duke of Milan, the first person you would enlist as your ally is your wife. Since you have not seen fit to make me your partner and ally in any real sense, then you could not possibly truly wish to become Milan's Duke. I do not believe what they say. I believe you are perfectly satisfied being Gian Galeazzo's regent. Beatrice cannot believe what has come out of her mouth, but she is quaking with excitement. Could her fall really have awakened a courageous and eloquent part of her brain that has lain dormant all her life? She keeps looking at Ludovico, trying to read his thoughts. Let us say, for the sake of argument, that this were true, that my ambition was to become Duke of Milan. Why exactly would I require my wife as my partner and ally? Because, my lord, there is no one else in Italy who would not betray you for his own gain but me. Many people respect you, even more fear you, but the greatest number would like to see your ruin. And why are you not among that number? I promised my father that with our marriage, the houses of Sforza and Este would forever be united. That is my duty to my family. Are you such an obedient daughter? Her mask crumbles. She can no longer dissemble. She makes her hands into small fists and pounds on the bed. No, my lord, I am not obedient at all. Why can't you see that I love you and want to be your wife? She puts her shamed face in her hands and begins to cry. Now he is free to laugh at her if he must. Instead, she feels his arms go around her. He holds her close, but as if he does not wish to hurt her with too much pressure. I see, he says. Little one, you must rest. The day's events have shaken your emotions. This dream seems to have confused you, Beatrice. You should sleep. Perhaps in the morning your good cheer will have returned. She is about to protest that he is wrong, that it is her love for him that moves her, when he continues. The astrologer says that in a fortnight the stars will again be aligned for me to sire a son. That is how you can be my partner. Rest now and get well so that you can give us children. Is he just trying to get away from her again? She has not been successful. He does not fear her alliance with Isabel of Aragon or with Naples. He does not see her as a woman, wife, and partner, but as a birthing machine. If she is not that to him, then she is nothing. My good cheer will not return, my lord, unless you begin to treat me as a wife. But you have everything you desire, he protests. I have everything I desire but my husband. I may as well return to my father's house. I think you would like that. She rubs the tears from her eyes and looks directly at her husband. She realizes that she has shifted from astute political player to whining child in these last moments, but she is no longer in control, so she hurls angry words at him. I believe that would please you. I believe that I will have Messer Trotti go to my father tomorrow morning with the news that Ludovico Sforza does not care for Beatrice d'Este. Then you might fight all of Italy on your own. with your beloved French at your side, as if they will be loyal to you once they have finished with you. I hope everything in my dream comes to pass. Then you will see what you lost by not loving me." She tries to get up. She is sore from the fall, but she is also young and strong, and she wills herself to roll away from her husband. She stands up, staring across the bed at him, but she has risen too quickly, and she feels the blood rush to her head. Steadying her legs against the side of the bed, she uses all of her strength to stay lucid and erect. "Your Excellency, I have seen you handle the bow, and I assure you that I do not wish you to be against me," he says. "Are you back to mocking me, my lord?" she asks. "Never." He is smiling at her now, beaming, actually. There is no mockery in his face. "You are wonderful, Beatrice. You are bold and brave. One moment a courageous woman, the next a pouting girl. You are, oh, I don't know. You are my tiny Amazon." He rises slowly and walks to the other side of the bed. He takes her in his arms. She feels unsteady, and she leans against him for support. She wishes that they might remain this way forever. What must we do to make certain that this terrible nightmare of yours never comes to pass?" he asks. She has no idea if he is softening to her, or if he is trying to protect himself politically, but she does not care. She thinks the outcome will be the same. He will learn to love her. She grabs onto his brocade vest, clutching it, pulling him closer to her. "The fall from the horse has stirred my womb, Ludovico. We don't need an astrologer's calculations any more. Make love to me now. You don't need another woman. I am your wife, and I am telling you that any other woman trying to usurp that office will have to leave the Castello immediately. Otherwise, I will go home to Ferrara, or to Naples, or to wherever I have to go to escape this humiliation." "But my dear—" "Say nothing about it, Ludovico, but act before it is too late. I understand that we must be generous to your child. God knows my father was kind to his bastards. But I will not have another wife in my house. If she is in the Castello when we return, I will go first to my sister and brother-in-law in Mantua and explain my predicament. Then on to my father's home. Whether my father chooses to avenge the disgrace I've suffered is beyond my control." From the notebook of Leonardo. On the penis. It has some relations with human intelligence and sometimes shows an intelligence of its own. Where a man may desire it to be stimulated, it remains obstinate and follows its own path. Sometimes it moves on its own without permission from its owner, or by any thought or desire of that person. Whether the organ's owner is asleep or awake, it does what it pleases. Often the man is asleep and his penis is awake, or the man is awake and it is asleep. Or the man would like it to be in arousal, but it refuses. Often it desires action, and the man refuses. That is why it seems that this creature often has a life and an intelligence apart from the greater organism that carries it. Yet it seems that the man is wrong to be ashamed of giving it a name or showing it off. That which those would have him cover and hide, he ought to expose with solemnity, with the demeanor of a priest at Mass. Oh, God. September 1492, in the city of Milan. Sorry, the way men talk about their junk, I can't. Beatrice trots along in her new chariot that Ludovico had especially made for her. Its wood is fine and heavy, but Il Moro had one of the many artisans in his employ gilt its edges. A soft tent, the fabric of which is changed every day to match her outfit, keeps the September sun off of her face as she navigates her way through Milan's streets. When she thinks on how her life has changed over the course of one short summer, she wants to sing, not softly and harmonically as one does in churches and parlors, but loudly, bodily, like the dwarves do late into the evening during their wine-soaked orgies. She would like to take off all her heavy clothes and do handstands naked like Matilda, showing her dimpled behind to anyone who cares to look. Sometimes she thinks that her small body is not made to accommodate such rambunctious happiness. She had taken a big risk, but it had paid off. She would never have made good on her threat to leave Ludovico, mostly because the Diamond's reaction to her returning back home would have been to spank her and put her in a convent. But Ludovico had no way of knowing that. Instead of being angry at her outburst, Ludovico was moved. Men adore to be adored, her mother always said. Now she had proof that it was true. That night, tears still wet on her face, back so sore from the fall that she could barely stand, she grabbed him by the vest and pulled him onto the bed. She climbed on top of him, kissing him madly, sucking on his tongue so hard that she could feel a deep pull within her womb. She remembered one of Matilda's little jokes that had always made her blush. If you rode that husband the way you ride that steed, all your problems would be solved. She had always been too embarrassed by the joke to ponder its wisdom, but at that moment, on top of her husband, feeling his arousal pressing against her, she decided to test the theory. For no one knows quite as much about sexual matters, or enjoys the activity with as much glee, as the little people. Finally, she understood what all the fuss was about. Men and women talked about, wrote about, sang about, dreamed about sexual passion all the time, and yet this was the first inkling Beatrice had of its power. She had undressed in front of him without modesty and asked him to do the same. Then she climbed on top of him and found that his hard penis slid with eager ease right into her slick wetness. Velvet, he had sighed, which had made her even more aroused. She thought of Matilda, she thought of Drago, she thought of a warm spring day in open countryside, and she began to canter, smoothly and easily until she was sure of the terrain. Then she let go of all control and launched into a spirited gallop, which she continued until she felt her whole body tense. She rode faster and faster, unaware now of the creature beneath her. Man, animal, who knew or cared? Finally her womb felt as if it was exploding, but instead of fearing it, she rocked more frantically to quicken her demise. In a burst of sweat and cries, it happened, and Beatrice thought that this must be the kind of ecstasy that devout nuns talk about when speaking of the passions of prayer, but this is not how the nuns advocate achieving it. For the next months, Beatrice and Ludovico were never apart, hunting and riding every day to exhaustion, exploring every inch of the parks of Vigevano. Game seemed to spring from every corner. Hare, deer, and roebucks on the ground, and heron and other river fowl in the skies. Some days they would take a canoe and fish, netting big mackerel and delicate speckled trout from the river. Ludovico took a new delight in everything Beatrice did, whether she made Drago or one of her dogs perform a little trick, or whether she slew a buck with a single well-placed arrow. He laughed without control at her jokes and antics. He bought her surprises, pearl earrings, a rosary with a giant diamond cross, and a young white mare hand-picked by Francesco from the Gonzaga stables to eventually mate with Drago. When Galeaz tried to whisk Beatrice away for a day of falconry, Ludovico advised him to start paying more attention to his fiancée and less to Il Moro's wife. Ludovico said it in good humor, making young Bianca Giovanna blush so hard that she had to hide her face in her hands, but Beatrice sensed that he was serious. Galeaz's days of distracting Beatrice were officially over. Beatrice did get anxious when Ludovico returned to Milan a few weeks ahead of her to take care of some pressing business. But when she arrived at the castello, she was told in furtive, excited tones by the servants that Cecilia Gallerani and her son, Cesare, had been moved to a palazzo by the Duomo, and that Ludovico had arranged her engagement to Count Bergamini, one of Il Moro's most loyal and chivalrous courtiers. The wedding was set for next month. Now Beatrice is driving to the workshop of the Florentine, Magistro Leonardo. Ludovico wishes for her to sit for the master. Beatrice has said that she does not want to be painted by Leonardo. Oh, not so much because of what Isabella had said, that it would put her on a parallel with Cecilia, for that painting was done more than 10 years ago, when Beatrice was but a little brat in the nursery, but because the man always leaves her with a feeling of disquiet. She has no idea why he has this effect on her, but it is almost to the point of superstition in her mind. If the Magistro paints her, the lovely world in which she has lived the summer long will somehow be altered. She knows it makes no sense, and that she does not want to insult Ludovico, who is willing to take the Magistro from his colossal equestrian statue just to immortalize her at this point of blissful youth and perfection, as her husband liked to say. So she has agreed to visit the Magistro to see if she can make herself comfortable with the idea of sitting for him. Upon entering the Corte Vecchia, she sees that the Magistro has made some progress on the statue of the horse, but the gigantic thing is being cast in pieces, and Beatrice is disturbed at the way the head lies on its side on the ground, apart from the legs, which are upright and waiting to be joined with the rest of the body. The body parts lying on the ground remind her that Leonardo was known for acquiring human bodies and dissecting them before audiences. What is one supposed to think of a man who exposes the insides of bodies? She leaves her chariot with the courtyard page and slips quietly through the open door and into his workshop. Boys are silently at work on various projects. 2 are finishing the details on portraits commissioned by the nobles of Milan, whose features were undoubtedly sketched in by the Magistro and then turned over to his apprentices for completion. Beatrice knows that if she agrees to be painted by Leonardo, the master will probably complete much of the work himself, as a tribute to her position as the wife of his lord and master. But if one were merely a rich merchant or an insignificant courtier who wished for a flattering engagement portrait of one of his daughters, or a picture of his wife in her best jewelry, then the Magistro would do the main sketch, turn the details over to his apprentice, and perhaps perform a little of his own magic in the finishing touches. Beatrice stands quietly, looking at the Magistro's many drawings hanging on the walls, most of ugly, deformed people. Why would such a genius have a fascination with freaks when he is capable of making the beautiful even more so? Cripples, blind men, old men whose faces have been eaten by some horrible disease. Could they be drawings of the dead? These are the things that line his walls. Intricate drawings of old, wrinkled, wizened men sit in pairs with heads of young men at the pinnacle of their beauty. The contrast almost disgusts her. The way he has placed these pictures seems to say, what is use of such beauty? For soon it fades into the decrepit state of the elderly. It is as if he has shared some private joke with God over the arrangement of things. Beatrice does not like this. She thinks he is taking issue with the way that our Lord has planned and executed man's fate. The Magistro sits on a stool, hunched over a drawing that Beatrice cannot see. His focus seems intense. A motto in fancy calligraphy is placed above his working space, Obstinate rigor. The others work in this manner too, focused, silent, intentional. It is so quiet that she thinks that she can hear their breathing above charcoal scratching on paper and brushes hitting wells of color. In front of Leonardo is a statue of Leda and the Swan, with which Ludovico has recently spent great effort to purchase from some dead cardinal's estate in Rome. Ever since Isabella sent him those 2 creatures for his pond, he has been obsessed with swans. Beatrice recalls that Ludovico had sent the statue, which was supposed to have dated from antiquity, to be cleaned and refurbished by the Magistro's workshop. Leonardo does not appear to have done anything to the statue, which is mottled with years of dirt and the droppings of birds, but now is staring at it, and then looking down to his paper. "Sir!" she finally announces herself. Leonardo turns around, startled. Immediately he stands, bowing to her. "Your Excellency, a privilege." "What is your drawing?" she asks. She knows that her husband will not be happy to hear that the Magistro is spending the day working on something other than the horse. The drawing startles her. It is much more suggestive than the statue. Leda, of Leonardo's invention, is curvaceous and naked. The Swan is huge, almost as tall as Leda, and he cups her body in lavish white feathery protection in a manner as proprietary as any man has ever claimed a woman. Her round hip fits neatly and perfectly into the curve of his wing, which drapes languidly down her thigh and leg. Beatrice cannot imagine how anyone has found eroticism in coupling with this animal, but the magistro has done it. Leda shyly turns away from the swan as if she is embarrassed to be enthralled with such a creature, yet enthralled she is. Beatrice feels her cheeks flush as she looks at the picture. She herself has recently been awakened to the look of pleasure and satisfaction that the magistro has drawn into Leda's face. "Ah, the swan," she says, groping for some innocuous comment. "My husband has a new fascination with the creatures. I am sure that your study will please him, should you ever choose to make a painting." "Your Excellency, he has already commissioned it," answers the master. He puts down his charcoal and raises his hand into the air ceremoniously. A young apprentice knows this signal and rushes to him with a bowl of water and a slice of lemon, so that he may clean the carbon from his long fingers. Has he? Beatrice feels the first pangs of jealousy she has felt in months. Could the obsession with swans signal his ongoing fascination with her sister? "Do you think it will please him?" the master asks. "It is beautiful. The swan, I mean." "Oh, yes. Zeus used the disguise to seduce, of course. The swan is the clever one, the one that cannot be resisted because of its beauty. No one imagines its purpose because it looks so pure." He adds in a low whisper, "I do not trust it." "And the woman? Look at her," he says. "What does she know? She is lost in her own pleasure." Beatrice does not like to hear this judgment upon Leda, nor is she willing to accept Leonardo's condemnation of the swan, because that would mean that those two creatures swimming in the pond inside the castello have power over Ludovico, which is perhaps what Isabella had intended when she sent them. "Can a swan not be pure?" she asks. "What of the tale of the Swan Maiden, whose robe of feathers was stolen by a hunter so that she would remain in female form and be his wife? The swan is blameless for her beauty. And she left the one who loved her at the first opportunity. Besides, that is a tale suitable for children, nothing more. There are many others. I watch the creatures myself, you know. I see how they transfix those who observe their grace, and yet, if they are threatened in any way, they can be brutal attackers. What is one to make of beasts of this dual nature? What of the story of the swan who sees its reflection in the pond, and knows that it is dying, and so begins to sing to its fellow creatures to console them for mourning his passing? Do you suppose that creatures of nature may be as foolish as we human beings?" he asks gently, a tiny woeful smile appearing on his face. "The swan knows when it is his time, knows that all things of this world are but an ephemeral gift. This inescapable fact evades only the human. No sooner is the poor mortal secure in his power and success than he is destroyed by forces larger than he." "Do you mean that our Lord destroys us, just as he creates us?" Beatrice asked. She hopes that she does not sound huffy. She wishes Isabella were here to help her engage in this sort of dialogue. Isabella would know just the correct profound retort to make such a pronouncement. "I do not, Your Excellency. I mean merely that nothing is permanent. All is as fleeting as our emotions. Only man's delusional state of mind prevents him from seeing this inevitability." Beatrice would like to get off of the subject of swans and mortality because it is adding to the anxiousness of being in this workshop. She, who is so sure-footed and grounded, is feeling a whirling vertigo. She does not want to look either up or down for fear that she will faint. "That is a very sorrowful observation, sir," Beatrice replies, gathering her wits. "How might one retain one's good humor if one contemplates such thoughts? Man may soon turn to dust, but does he not leave greatness in his stead? The tales of Homer or the treasures of ancient Greece and Rome attest to this fact. Your Excellency, forgive me for saying this, but only the rare and extraordinary man leaves something behind on this earth other than his excrement. He must have been startled by the shocked look on her face, because he adds quickly, "Your Excellency and the Duke, of course, being the most notable exceptions, what with your generous patronage of great works." "But you will leave behind many beautiful things," she counters quietly. "Paint flakes from the canvas, much as skin falls from the flesh. Man destroys his own creations. Nature takes care of the rest. What survives does so by accident." Beatrice turns her face away from the Magistro, but finds no comfort in the face of Leda, or in Leonardo's drawings, or in the motion of the apprentices as they go about their chores. "I understand we are to have a sitting, Your Excellency," Leonardo says, interrupting Beatrice's search for a soothing place for a soothing place for her focus to fall. "Yes," she answers in a low voice. "She wants to get out of this room in the worst way. She will agree to anything and then change her mind later. If his reputation is correct, he will never make the time to paint her anyway. First yourself, and then your sister, the illustrious Marchesa. Please explain to her that I know that I am not worthy to receive the commission to paint her likeness, and I am greatly flattered by her letters. But I have awaited the instruction of His Excellency, your husband, and he has finally granted her wish, with the caveat that I make your portrait first, as is only proper." The room begins to spin as the information makes its way into her head. So that is the game. Isabella and Ludovico have not seen fit to play their cards for Beatrice, but the Magistro has revealed all. Ludovico has no desire to have Leonardo make a painting of Beatrice, but he cannot, in good conscience, have the master paint the sister without doing homage to the wife. Oh, they are good players, but even the best eventually become transparent. Anger and determination set in. Beatrice feels the vertigo leave her head. She looks down, surprised to see such elegant, buckled velvet slippers on the feet of an artist. She almost wants to giggle. Suddenly, she feels the power that comes with knowledge. "Thank you for showing me your drawing," she says, looking back at the Magistro's intense face. "We shall be in touch, you and I." Leonardo seems surprised that she is taking leave so quickly before any arrangements or artistic considerations for her portrait have been discussed. She does not know why she is afraid of him. He has such kind eyes, but she does know that she has no intention of ever entering this studio again. Ludovico is waiting for her to have a light supper in their apartments. He gives her a great innocent smile as she enters the room and sits opposite him. "What? No kisses for your lord and master?" he asks, his dark eyes lit bright by the candles. She gets up and gives him a perfunctory kiss upon the head. "Did you have a nice visit with the Magistro? Did you make a time to sit for him?" Beatrice affects her most earnest face. "No, my lord, I did not. The man gives me a feeling of disquiet. I am not comfortable sitting for him. I feel that he will steal my soul. That is what they say he did when he painted Cecilia." "My dear, I observed Cecilia for 10 years after she was painted by the Magistro, and I assure you that she was still in possession of her soul." "Still, my lord, I do not think it wise for me to put myself on parallel with one who was your mistress. It would be unseemly." Beatrice wishes with all her heart that Isabella could hear the words she used to manipulate Beatrice turned back against her. Ludovico looks slightly anguished by her decision. "If that is how you feel, but you should consider that he is in our service and he is the greatest master of our day. Do you not wish to be painted by such a man? Even your most illustrious sister has said that she would like to be immortalized by such a genius." "Oh, no, my lord," Beatrice says, hoping that her face projects a sincere look of horror. "We cannot allow my sister to be put on the same level as one of your former mistresses. We can't let her risk her reputation that way. You know how people talk. Already your innocent kindness toward Isabella has been interpreted wickedly in certain quarters. You make too much of it, my dear, he replies. Isabella has a mania for good painting. That is all there is to the wish to sit for the magistro. I would love to see my sister happy, she says, cocking her head to the side wistfully, pretending that she is forming these thoughts as they come out of her mouth. But we cannot allow it to happen. Having the magistro paint another woman so close to you, about whom rumors have already spread, would fuel those wagging tongues. It would reek of adultery. What do we care what the gossips say? We are certain of our affection for each other. But, my lord, we must be more careful in our actions. Oh, not on my behalf, but I believe that we might be expecting an addition to our family sometime early next year. Ludovico stands, fingers white and tense on the table. He appears to be balancing himself. His lips slowly spread into a smile. Beatrice raises a finger, signaling him to listen to what she has to say. She continues, This would be the time to present ourselves in the best possible light, as an entirely devoted family, impenetrable and unable to be breached from the outside. This news will certainly strengthen your position with the people of Milan. I mean, what with a legitimate heir on the way. Ludovico shakes his head. You are a wonder, he says, rushing around the table to embrace his wife. She loves this feeling of being engulfed by him, loves smelling the scent he uses imported from eastern lands that makes her think of incense and spices, and loves crushing her face against the soft velvet of his robe. She feels that for the first time he is hugging not just her, but the life that is stirring deep inside her. Let us wait a few more weeks before making an official announcement, my love, just to be certain that it's true. Very well, Ludovico says, though suppressing such news will be difficult. He raises his hands as if issuing a proclamation. Well then, the matter of sitting for the magistro is closed. Beatrice wonders, however, if beneath the surety he is already trying to invent the excuses he will have to give to the persistent Isabella. Perhaps, he begins ponderously, as if he is making an agreeable argument for himself, if we do not distract him with portraiture, he will set his mind to completing the horse. Chapter 5. L'Imperatrice, the Empress. I butchered that, I know I did. I tried, I'm sorry. June 1493, in the territory of Mantua. Isabella sits in the June heat, gently rocking in the Bucentaur at the intersection of the Po and Mincio rivers, wondering what reversal of fortune has brought her to the point where her sister has risen so far above her that she cannot deign to stop for a few days to visit Isabella's home, but insist on dragging her out into the river in order to get a glimpse of her and catch up on the latest news. I would most willingly visit you at Mantua on my way home from Venice, but my husband is extremely anxious for me to return to him. I must beg you to let me enjoy the sight of you in the Bucentaur. You must not insist that I take time to land. The ostensibly innocent words might well have been sent with 100 arrows straight to Isabella's heart. It seems that these days Beatrice cannot deliver enough slights to her sister. Whether or not it is intentional, each triumph in Isabella's life is immediately overshadowed by Beatrice's latest victory. Isabella does not want to be disagreeable toward her sister. Perhaps her sensitivity is a result of her pregnancy, for Isabella is finally expecting a child, but it is only the 2nd month, and she wakes each morning with a queasy stomach and the absence of desire to leave her bed. She should have insisted that Beatrice come to Mantua instead of agreeing to this damned river meeting. Though the Po is calm, every ripple of the gentle waters threatens to make her sick. But Beatrice was adamant that the sisters had to meet and talk. and that it had to be in this inconvenient and hurried way. Isabella's woes with her sister had started a year ago, when Ludovico had seemed to fall in love with, of all people, his own wife. The first sign had arrived in the form of a letter from him at the summer's end, giving Isabella all manner of reasons why he could not arrange for Magister Leonardo to paint her. You know how I live to please you, my dear, but I am having tremendous difficulty moving the Florentine to work on the horse commission, much less interest him in portraiture. I broached the subject of making your portrait with him, and he replied that he was in the midst of a study on the human eye, and would return to painting faces once he has finally understood the mechanics of sight. You know how difficult he is, etc., etc. This nonsense was preceded by a summer of letters from Beatrice, describing in great detail how close she and her husband had grown in recent times, that they were despondent when absent from each other's company, even for an hour. She wrote on and on, ad infinitum and ad nauseam, about how they spent day after day after day in pursuit of the various pleasures that Ludovico had designed for them, hunting, fishing, riding, falconry, and buying extravagant things just to make me smile. Beatrice had written most cloyingly. It seemed that Ludovico could not fulfill just one of Isabella's small requests any more. So busy was he showering his wife with affection and finery. Isabella wrote to Ludovico, asking him to send the sculptor Cristoforo Romano to Mantua to make a bust of her. He had done a lovely bust of Beatrice a few years ago, making her much more beautiful than she had ever appeared. Isabella did not say that she wished for Cristoforo to be her consolation prize for having to delay being painted by Leonardo for God knew how long, but she hoped Il Moro would have seen it that way and would send the sculptor to her immediately. But suddenly Beatrice decided that she wished to make a short trip to Genoa, and she could not do so without the company of her favorite singers, Cristoforo being the most treasured member of her choir. Finally, after this supposed summer of bliss that the two love-birds spent together, Beatrice delivered the coup de grace, writing to announce that she was pregnant and wishing for the company of her sister, as if Isabella, who had yet to become pregnant, wanted to see Beatrice in the exalted condition of carrying Ludovico's first legitimate child. It was all very puzzling to Isabella, with whom Ludovico had been conniving for the better part of a year to arrange a visit, so that the two of them could be together. She wondered if this new-found affection between husband and wife was a figment of Beatrice's hopeful imagination. She would have to find out for herself. After 100 delays, most of them curiously furnished by Francesco, Isabella left Mantua with her extravagant new wardrobe. She had spent the previous year pestering Francesco into spending the money for its construction, and watching it being packed into trunks. She felt the enormous sense of satisfaction one feels in persevering to achieve one's goals. She kissed Francesco goodbye, and days later was all the way to Cremona, when she realized that she had forgotten her most fetching plumed hat. She promptly sent a sulky messenger back to Mantua to retrieve it. She was not about to ruin the effect of a fine bejeweled costume by wearing a mismatched headpiece. "You'd better sneak it out of my rooms," she had told him. "I do not want the Marquis to think I am frivolous." But what she really did not want was her husband to know that she had paid a man several days' wages so that she could have the right hat at the right time on her head. Isabella knew that she was going to Milan with fiendish thoughts on her mind, but she couldn't help it. Once one couldn't stop thoughts from arriving in one's brain. She hoped to find Beatrice big and fat in her pregnancy so that she, Isabella, could look more beautiful in Ludovico's eyes. That is, if he was not already beside himself with wanting her. Oh, she had no intention of succumbing to his advances. She had already worked out in her mind the scenario by which she would refuse intercourse with him. She would tell him that the Gonzagas were expert breeders, known throughout the world for their fastidiousness and genius in breeding perfect horses and dogs. Did Ludovico not think that Francesco would not see the signs of another man's features in his own child's face, should their affair lead to pregnancy? But she had no opportunity to play the rehearsed scene. She arrived to the news that the Duke and Duchess were in conference with the Magistro. What luck, she thought. She would use the opportunity to directly schedule a sitting with Leonardo, avoiding the intermediaries. This time he could not use Ludovico's demands upon him if Ludovico were there to release him to her. And surely Ludovico would do that for her. Beatrice, pregnant and secure with her husband, would surely support the idea. Over the protestations of the Duke's secretary, "They will cherish the surprise of my arrival," she assured the man, Isabella outpaced Ludovico's staff and entered the parlor unannounced. Isabella perceived the inhabitants of the room as if players in a tableau. Ludovico's hands were in mid-air in the universal gesture of frustration. In one hand he held a piece of parchment that fell limp over his fingers like a handkerchief. The Magistro had his weight on his back foot as if in a reluctant bow, his chin slightly tucked and eyes downward cast like a proud Spanish don who had just suffered a slight to his dignity. Beatrice's hands were pressed together at the chest, as if she were making a silent prayer for consolation between the two of men. A skinny boy, presumably the Magistro's servant, cowered by the hearth. The conversation was hushed now, but the tension was, from whatever was last said, hung in the air. All faces turned toward Isabella, each registering the surprise of her intrusion. No one moved but remained frozen. Finally, Ludovico spoke. "What a charming surprise," he said, placing the parchment on a table with what appeared to be a series of drawings, which Isabella hoped were renderings and plans for one of the Magistro's great works. She so loved to see works of art in the planning stages. Beatrice, plump, robust, and glowing, moved quickly toward her sister, embracing her. The Magistro, Isabella saw over Beatrice's shoulder, was making great circles with his arms as he bowed low and formal, showing her the top of his head. She noticed that his lush suede shoe, toe pointed directly at her, was decorated with jewels. "How dreadful of me to interrupt your conference," Isabella said. "Nonsense," Ludovico said. "It is wonderful to see you safely arrived. In fact, being a renowned patron of many artists, perhaps you can assist me in this discussion with our great master." Ludovico took his sister-in-law from his wife's arms and kissed both of her cheeks. Beatrice was uncharacteristically quiet, perhaps grateful that Isabella had arrived to mediate. She withdrew behind Ludovico and Isabella, sitting on a chair with a small sigh, relieved of carrying the weight of the baby in her belly. Isabella registered this fact, hoping that Beatrice's pregnancy would be keeping her more sedentary than usual and unable to interfere with any of her sister's schemes. Ludovico spread the drawings of the desk for Isabella to see. Dozens and dozens of sketches of every conceivable element of a horse's body from snout to tail. Flaring nostrils, open mouths revealing fierce teeth, prancing legs, sturdy flanks, even muscular rear ends with long, flouncing tails jumped at her from the page. "Ah, studies for the great equestrian monument," Isabella exclaimed. The most startling of the sketches was that of a horse rearing up on its hind legs, front legs scrambling violently in the air, with a rider clinging fiercely to its back. "Why, it looks as if this creature might come to life, throw its rider, and gallop off the page," Isabella said. She scrutinized the Magistro's face for a reaction to the compliment and was happy to see a modest smile break across his face, as if she had scored a point for a team on which both of them might be playing. "Yes, true enough," Ludovico said. "Lovely drawings all, but our maestro will not begin sculpting the horse in earnest unless he can figure out how to accomplish the impossible, which is to make a colossal bronze of the animal rearing on its hind legs. I am told by everyone that this cannot be achieved." "Everything might be achieved with time and inquiry," Leonardo said. Ludovico riffled through the drawings of a particular one, and finding it, waved it in Leonardo's face. And what does this have to do with your interminable goal of making the horse stand on its rear legs while synchronizing its front legs in perfect motion and harmony? The magistro stiffened against the anger hurled at him. He stood slightly taller, Isabella noticed, rather than cowering before his benefactor. Isabella took the drawing from Ludovico. It appeared to be an architectural plan for equestrian stables. "With your permission, your Excellency," the magistro said, taking the drawing from Isabella and placing it on the table. He pointed to what appeared to be a system of chutes. "This is a design for what I believe would be the perfect stable. Here, the hay would flow automatically from the lofts above, freeing up the stable attendants for other labors. Never again would one have to worry over feeding times. The troughs are replenished with pumps, a system of plumbing that would rival the finest of baths in castles and palaces. Clean water would flow freely upon need." The magistro stepped back from his creation so that he could see Isabella's response, but Ludovico interrupted before she could speak. "But how does this get us any closer to the monument?" Ludovico asked, his shaky voice rising with each word. "You are a forward-thinking man, Your Excellency," the magistro countered. "I assumed that you would like to be the owner of the most advanced and modern stables in Italy." Isabella was about to invite Leonardo to Mantua to show this design to her husband, the most famous breeder of horses in Italy, who would surely appreciate his labors, when Ludovico spoke again. "Magistro Leonardo," Ludovico began, his efforts to control himself visible in the tightening of his jaw, "we have been more than a dozen years in discussion, you and I, over the matter of the horse. If you do not soon present me with a monument, something with hooves, a tail, and a mane, I will be forced to cancel the commission and put a living horse on a pedestal, to be changed whenever it dies from thirst, inactivity, or heat stroke." Leonardo stood silently, amazed, perhaps, along with Isabella, at Ludovico's outburst. "It would be less costly," Ludovico added, as if bolstering his argument, "even if the horses were of fine quality." "Ah, Your Excellency, I see that you believe I have wasted my hours, when it has been my highest intent to create something not commonly seen, something extraordinary and new with which to honor the memory of your illustrious father." Leonardo's voice was silky and even. "I shall quicken my efforts, not because I believe that speed will contribute to quality, but because it is my fondest wish to serve you." With that the magistro's nostrils flared, not unlike those of the horse in his drawings. He did not appear insulted or angry, but rather puffed himself up like a rooster who was about to leave a satisfied hen-house. Before Ludovico could reply, the magistro performed perfunctory bows in the directions of Beatrice and Isabella, snapping his finger at his mute servant before turning away from them and hurrying from the room. The boy scooped Leonardo's drawings off the table and, without meeting anyone's eyes, ran after his master. Isabella wanted to fly after the magistro and invite him to Mantua, but she dared not. She wanted to assure him that neither she nor the Marquis would ever hurry his genius, that they understood that such labors evolved in their own time. She looked to her sister, expecting Beatrice to admonish her husband for his impatience, but Beatrice was in the act of standing and offering her chair to him instead. "My dear, you mustn't allow yourself to get so distraught over these dealings with the magistro. It isn't good for your health. He does not mean to be a frustration to you." Rather than sit, Ludovico took his wife into his arms, kissing her forehead. "Imagine, Isabella, my wife is heavy with child, and it's my health that concerns her." He raised Beatrice's face so that he could look into her eyes. "How did I ever live without you, my darling? Isabella, does she not look positively beatific?" Indeed she did. Beatrice's cheeks were cherub pink, and, like her belly, rounded. She must have been staying off her steeds, as a precaution because her skin was soft and pale like the petal of a white rose. Beatrice's brown doll's eyes were wider than ever, but in Isabella's mind there was a new strength to her sister that belied her ever-softening features. Yet Ludovico was doting over her as if she were a newly acquired piece of precious porcelain. "A rose in full bloom," Isabella muttered, aware that she had not only just lost an opportunity to arrange a sitting with Leonardo, but was also losing whatever secret power she had formerly held over her brother-in-law. She even wondered if Ludovico had his outburst in front of her, so that she would see his difficulties with the magistro and stop requesting a sitting. Her brother-in-law was capable of such subtle intrigue, though mistaken if he thought his sister-in-law would be so easily deterred. The man acquired his position at this court after convincing me that it would be his greatest passion to make the equestrian statue in honor of my father, but in the last 12 years he has spent his time on everything but that. "You don't know the half of it, Isabella," Beatrice said. "The magistro tells us that he spends all his time working towards sculpting the horse, but we have heard that he is devoting secret time to inventing a machine that would enable a man to take flight as if he were a bird. Imagine!" "Can you not withhold his household allowance?" Isabella inquired. "He should soon be hungry enough to do your bidding." "Oh, I am soft when it comes to genius," Ludovico exclaimed, putting his head in his hands as if he was never sorrier for another soul than he was for himself for having this all too mortal foible. Ludovico went on to explain how Leonardo spent all his days at the stables, admiring 4 particular stallions, as well as the magnificent frescoes of different colored horses, and drawing them from every possible angle. "He has spent more time looking at a horse's rear end than any man in history," Ludovico complained, throwing Beatrice into peals of giggles. "I believe he is trying to make a horse's ass out of me." "One cannot hurry genius," Isabella said, aware that Ludovico was, with every utterance, also preparing her for the disappointment of hearing that Leonardo, making a portrait of her on this visit, was out of the question. "I am beside myself," Ludovico complained. "A few months ago I sent a request to Lorenzo the Magnificent to send me another Florentine sculptor who could execute the equestrian monument, but then Lorenzo, God rest his discriminating and shrewd soul, passed away. I'll never be able to replace Leonardo now. Damn the man!" "You must rest, Ludovico," Beatrice said. "These things always have a way of working out for the best." She took Isabella's arm, leading her out of the room. "Would Ludovico really send the magistro away?" Isabella asked, wondering if she could use this opportunity to steal the magistro away to Mantua without incurring her brother-in-law's wrath. "Oh, Ludovico will calm down. Those two are like an old married couple, Isabella. At the end of the day they always make up. They would no more part company than would mother and father." Isabella had her first opportunity to be alone with Ludovico when he offered to take her on a tour of the treasure tower. Ludovico took the key from the steward and dismissed him, opening the door for Isabella and allowing her to walk in. Armed guards, replaced every 8 hours, Ludovico explained, stood at attention as the Marchesa passed by and into the vaults. She heard the door close behind her. Light streamed from triangular windows set high in the walls, falling on bushels and bushels of silver ducats sitting in painted barrels and organized according to weight and worth. Long tables held jewels of every kind, the stones and gems too numerous in variety for Isabella to identify. Great silver crosses, laden with diamonds, were arranged from small to large, covering the length of a dining table. Collars and belts glittering with variegated gems lay waiting to be placed about the neck or hip of the fortunate. Tapestries and paintings lined the walls from ceiling to floor. Trunks of silver sat upon hand-woven carpets, and tall candelabra of gold and silver, perhaps 200 pairs crowded the corner of the great room like some strange army frozen in motion. In the far reaches of the vault sat heaps of coins of every kind, piled so high that Isabella guessed that Beatrice, on her best horse, could not have jumped it. Isabella felt light-headed, surrounded by so much wealth, realizing that she was visiting her sister's personal jewelry box. "Dazzling," she finally said to Ludovico, who had awaited her response. "This is nothing," he said, producing another dark iron key from the pocket of his robe. He then began to open the doors of the cabinets lining the walls. Isabella hardly knew how to take in the contents. Crowns and other bejeweled headpieces, rings of every size, shape, and stone, ropes of pearls both black and white, and reams of gold cloth and heavy brocade. "It is too much to take in," Isabella said. "2 eyes are inadequate to the task." "The wealth of a small kingdom inside every cabinet," Ludovico said. "The cabinets alone are beautiful," Isabella said, noting the intricate ivy pattern painted delicately on every door. She tried to trace the snaking design with her eyes, getting dizzy in the process. "Designed and decorated by the Magistro himself," Ludovico said. "Ah," Isabella thought, "an opening. Having him make my portrait would be worth everything in this room to me," Isabella said, as if to the air. "And yet I can give you anything in this room but that," she heard him say. She turned around to look at him. Gone was the dancing flirtation in his eyes that had been there the last time she saw him. He seemed older now, treating her as if she were the younger, and Beatrice the more mature. Could pregnancy accomplish so much? "I must be very direct with you, Your Excellency." He had never sounded so formal when addressing her. Isabella knew it signaled the end of a certain intimacy between them. "I have already approached the subject with my wife. She will not brook such a thing. She fears that it would signal to the world that I have had another affair." "But if the Magistro painted her first?" Isabella offered, feeling the hollow of her stomach sink, remembering how she, herself, had already sabotaged that possibility. "She won't have it. She will not be placed on par with one of my mistresses." Isabella leaned on one of the tables for support. She thought she would faint. How could she have been so stupid, so intentionally cruel? And now God was punishing her for the sin. She deserved to suffer. At the same time, she knew that she was not about to give up. This would not be like giving up on a pearl ring or an antique vase or some other trifle. This would be like giving up on immortality itself. But at this moment, she was caught in the middle of a web that she herself had spun, and unsure of what to do. "You look unwell, Isabella," Ludovico said, taking her hand without a trace of the sensuality that had passed between them. He looked at her like a concerned father. "What can we do?" she asked him with tears forming in her upturned eyes. "At the moment, nothing. As you know, there have been rumors enough about the 2 of us. The situation is delicate for many reasons. I have tried to make friends everywhere, but I am discovering that I have many enemies. I cannot afford to make one of my wife." Okay. We will stop there for the evening. All right. So how is everyone liking the story so far? For some reason, with this book, unlike the other 2, I'm finding, maybe it's the way the writer has phrased lots of things in here, but I find myself stumbling over stuff. It feels like this book is full of like tongue-twisty sentences, and I'm catching every single one of them. Ishmael, did you send me another hat? You did. You sent me another hat and mustache. Oh, but... Well, hi, kitties. I didn't realize you were in the room with me. Oh, God. But I will call that an evening. So I will have Tuesday's reading posted, hopefully, by the end of this evening. I will have tonight's reading posted by sometime maybe either tomorrow night, probably on Sunday. That will most likely be when I have tonight's reading posted. So look for that. And if you have not been present for the other readings, or if you've not been able to catch like all of them in their entirety, please feel free to hop over to my YouTube channel. I've got all of my Nikki content on there and all of the book readings that we've done so far. So this is the third book of our reading series. And last time, I think Ishmael, you were the one who asked me what book I'll be reading next, and that will depend entirely upon you guys. So once we get to probably this much left, I'll make a video listing 3 new books, and you guys can vote, and we'll figure out which ones I will read next in our series. So with that being said, I hope you all have a fantastic evening and have a great Memorial Day weekend. If you're in the States, celebrating Memorial Day weekend. If you're from abroad, have a great weekend regardless. And I will see you guys on Tuesday. Same time, 8 to 9:30. Have a good one.